so let's get started. How is everybody? Feeling okay? Here in Brazil, it's the end of our school year, so we're all very busy writing reports and things. It's a very busy and tiring time of the year, but it's also so rewarding, right? Being a teacher, working with education, and seeing the way our students grow and thrive. I feel very privileged to be able to work with something I really love. So here's a little warm up for you. I'm showing you some images. And they're little slices of my life, and I'm going to have a good look at them, see what you think. Does anybody know these two chaps? So I'm going to put some sentences up, and I'd love you to be able to complete the sentences in the chat box. So where do you think my family are from? From Scotland. Yes, Karen. Yes, they are from Scotland. Unfortunately, I'm not related to any of these two actors, but okay. And then I went to study in a city and something happened. What was that? This is the second one here. I went to study in this, yes, in London. Yes, and I fell in love, exactly. You can see it's a difficult thing. It happens a lot with native speakers and foreigners, right? That's what brought me to live in Brazil. Yes, exactly. And what do you think my passion is? Look at all these little faces. What do you think I'm doing? It's teaching. Yeah, it's teaching who? Teaching young learners. Yes, and here in Brazil. Exactly. Teaching children. I'm doing a storytelling session there. So that's just a little slice of my life. Thank you for contributing in the chat box. I always like to have this when I'm starting with a new group of children or teachers or whoever, because I think it's nice for us to share slices of our lives, right? When we do that, we're not just the teacher, we're the human being in the classroom, and that already sets us up for some sort of deeper connection with our students. So remember that, always share something from your life with your students if you can. So let's look at the plan then for the session, all right? We're going to start off looking at some rich learning environments. They're very important, right? Children are like little sponges, yeah? They take in everything that's around them, and a lot of the learning input that they get when they're with us in our schools and our classrooms comes from the environment. So we're going to look at qualities of that. See if there are things that you can, get inspired about. Maybe you have some of these things I'm going to show you in your classroom. Maybe you want to add that special touch. Then we're going to look at learning to learn, right? Not just the how of learning, but the why and the pieces and bits of language, how they fit together, and how do children see that learning happen for themselves, right? So we'll be talking about that. Learning to learn. And then I'm going to give you some very practical examples from course books and things that I've been doing in my school as well, so that you can see how we can support this learning journey, right? The input, the production, and then the communication. Because let's face it, if we're teaching a language, it's for our students to speak it, right? To communicate as global citizens all around the world, in whatever area they're in, wherever they are, with whom they want to speak to. So it's really nice that we think about this journey carefully so that they are going to be very effective speakers of English. And then finally, I love finishing a session with some very practical examples with some projects that I've been doing in my school that perhaps might spark some inspiration or curiosity for you to try out in your classroom too. As Nathan said, if any questions come up, feel free to pop them in the chat box, and at the end, hopefully I'll be able to answer some of them. All right, so rich learning environments. Let me take you on this journey. This is an image drawn by an illustrator, an educator from Italy. His name is Francesco Tonucci. And I really love this image because he says it's the school for 2050. Well, I hope to see schools before 2050 that look a little bit like this. Can you see that this school has different learning spaces in it, inside and outside the classroom? And you can see that it has nature. Nature is very present in this school, right? And I'm going to be talking a bit about that too, because having been at home and having been online for so many months, I see the difference when my children come into my school, they run around, they climb trees, and the whole environment outside the classroom brings a sense of peace and tranquility, and also a sense of belonging, because nature mirrors everything we do, right? It has seasons, it has the colors, it has the moments of being quiet, the moments of bursting with flowers. So it's important for children to have a connection, I think, with this. And here you'll see a picture of the school that I'm speaking to you from on the island. I'm very lucky to have this outside area. I built the school and I chose it specially because of these qualities, because I think that if we're going to teach anything, we need to teach children to be life citizens, right? So this space allows me to experiment with different things. And as a materials writer and as a teacher trainer, everything that I'm going to share with you today happened in that little space. Okay. All right. So right at the beginning of this year, I saw this image, and this, as children started to go back to school, I found this image so curious. I understood, yes, that the child's going back to school and leaving their toys behind. Obviously, children don't necessarily take their toys to school, but it made me feel like they were leaving their play behind. And for me, I believe that play is learning. And I think the more playful ways that we can find to teach English, the students will keep that language for longer because it will have an emotional attachment to them, right? And if we look at what children bring in their minds and in their bodies and in their spirits when they come to school, it's a wealth of information, yeah? And sometimes we don't get a chance to tap into that. So I wanted to make a connection between this inner wealth of knowledge and interesting things that children bring naturally with them when they come to our schools, and think about ways that in the sense of the language input, how can we make it a wonderful exploratory experience for them, full of interesting images, full of songs and rhymes and beautiful words, right? That would be my starting point. So let's have a look. Play is learning. Now, some of you may know, I know that there are some people here from Italy. You have the most wonderful pedagogic methodology in the north of Italy from Reggio Emilia, especially for preschoolers. And the founder of this methodology is Loris Malaguzzi, and he said, there are infinite ways that children can express, explore, and connect their thoughts, feelings, and imaginings. Isn't that wonderful? The imaginings. And you can see children are so free and they're so full of life. And it's really important for us as teachers to know as much as we can about their learning stages, about their physical, mental, and spiritual development, and how best we can choose the activities in our classroom to keep them motivated and happy, right? A happy learner is a learner who's remembering things, I think. So have a look at these spaces now. Some are Waldorf, perhaps, some are Reggio Emilia, some are Montessori. And I do know that we have different classrooms all around the world. And here in Brazil, in our public school system, the vast majority of classrooms are very simple, you know, very, very simple. They don't have a lot of color. They don't have plants. They don't have cloth. They don't have enough resources sometimes. So clever teachers will realize that and be able to bring something really simple, like if you do have a very simple classroom, just bring a colored cloth to put over your table, bring a little plant. Yeah, imagine organizing your classroom into little workstations where children can get up and move around and do different things. Yeah, So you can see lots of different elements here. If your school doesn't have a library, for example, perhaps you have a wonderful book at home that you could bring into the classroom for children to look at images, to draw, to discuss. So we can find resources wherever we are, however simple, but we do need to be creative. Wouldn't you agree? When you look at these images, does it remind you of anything that you have in your classroom that you like? Can you just pop that in the chat box? What are the things that you like that you have in your classroom that you know makes it just a little bit special? Maybe it's something you made. Do any of you have greenery around your classroom? Okay, you have things to organize, you have plants. Okay, some of you don't have things. Okay, you can work with projects, nice wallpaper. You know, it can be just a detail. Books and photos. Yes, how to make the classroom space personalized to the students. Yes, even if it means putting pictures up and taking them down. Okay, craft materials, things that are laminated, soft boards, wonderful portraits of the children themselves, crafts. Exactly, you've got it. All those things make a difference, don't they? And at the same time, we think about how we want our students to learn. We have to remember to make sure the classroom environment isn't too busy as well, especially for young learners, right? For me, this space, it doesn't seem that there is a space just to be quiet, to reflect. It seems like there's a lot going on here. It's a learning environment. It could possibly be perhaps a library space. I don't know, but I find that that's a lot of information and we have to be careful. And that brings me to talk just briefly about protecting childhood, right? Yeah, even when, you know, we have those students who are really smart and they seem to be, you know, years ahead, we have to remember that children who are 6 need to be 6 before they're 7 and so on, right? They need to have time. Learning takes time. Learning takes a lot of care and a lot of energy, right, from we teachers. Okay. So here you're going to see outside spaces in our school. And these are spaces that we use for a lot of language input and production too. So if it's break time, you're going to see that we have lots of skipping ropes. So we have skipping games, we have jumping games, and we're always using English around the children, right? Here they can take a clipboard with a piece of paper to work in the garden. They can find things, we can do treasure hunts with words, anything that's interactive, things that move their body and touch their senses. Yes. Here in the middle, you'll see 2 children working on parts of the body, a very typical primary lesson. But one student has drawn around the actual body size of the other, and they're labeling it. And they are also, they can also color it in a personalized way. To definitely remember this lesson because they had fun doing it, and they were able to use their gross and fine motor skills, and it generated a lot of creative energy and language as well. Here as well on the top right, we always start with a circle time where we play a lot of games. This has been particularly good right now as the children are coming back to school for social emotional exchanges, yeah, talking about how they're feeling, listening to each other, taking turns, negotiating, etc. So this is also a very helpful format. And here the little girls here have set up a tent with coloured cloth. You know, children do need time outside of the classroom, and they are still learning, and so many different things happen. Yeah, they don't, all the things in the classroom, in the playground, don't always have to be teacher led. That's what I want to say. Let them be as well. Yeah. Here you're going to see the possibility, as I've said, that the outside spaces are like the 3rd teacher of the school, right? These outside spaces teach children a lot, whether it's in the kitchen garden or going to the local shop with a shopping list in English, because we're working on food vocabulary or countables and uncountables, for example. Yeah, it's the hands-on investigative possibilities that help our students maximize their learning. Yeah, and for these little boys that went to the supermarket, that was a lesson that they would never forget. The same as the boys who'd picked the spinach from the kitchen garden and made a spinach omelette, right? Here in the middle, you can see a ritual that we have every year in Brazil. It's a kind of bonfire party, and it happens in June. Here in the south of Brazil, we have winter, so it's a little bit chilly. So we have this bonfire, and we get students to write on a little piece of paper things that they want to get rid of. It can be personal things, it can be things about the world or about school, any way that they can express themselves and get rid of negative energy, if you like. So they burn that piece of paper on the fire, and with another piece of paper, they write something positive that they would like for themselves, for their peers, for their school, for their families, and those bits of paper are tied onto a tree. So here's a question for you, and again, write in the chat box. What kind of rituals do you have in your school? And do you know how rituals are so important? Yes, they bring routine, but they bring a sense of togetherness, which is so important for children these days, yeah? So think about it. You have market days, wonderful, okay, great. Circle time every day. Rituals are something that children look forward to. They like a routine. It gives them security to know what's going to happen next, right? And some rituals are waited for, aren't they? They wait for them with anticipation. International Day, story time rituals, wonderful. Every day, kindness diaries, that's a beautiful idea. Exactly, story time rituals. Excellent. Morning assembly, eating days. Oh, what a lot of creative teachers we have here today. Fantastic. Okay, so if you don't have rituals in your school, try and think of one that you could set up. Yeah, something that happens every year that you can look forward to, and obviously something that touches your students that's meaningful. I'm going to share a little song that we have in our school. And it's a very easy song because I've taken the melody and I've put in English lyrics to suit my school. It's a song we sing at the beginning of circle time every day that the students come to the school. And I'm going to share the lyrics with you now. In this line where it says in our classroom, sometimes here I say in the garden, the secret garden, because I've personalized it to my space. So this is a line that you can change for the name of your school, the name of your class, whatever you see fit. You'll see here at the beginning of term, we're teaching the song to the children. We have it written on the board here. We've even got a visiting mum. At the beginning of term, if any parents want to see our circle time, I always invite them because I think that makes a nice connection so they can see their child. And it also helps with new students too. So I'm going to sing the Secret Garden song, or the ritual song that you can have. And the melody is, Oh My Darling Clementine. You'll also see some total physical response actions that I'm going to do, which also help students to visualize and understand the language. We are here, we are here, we are here to play and learn. Speak in English, listen up and take our turn. In the garden, the secret garden, we can listen, read and write. In English, do our best with all our might. So at the end, when you cross the two hands over, especially for younger children, when you cross the two arms over the heart, it brings them a sense of security. It's a very simple thing, but it's also profound as well. And sometimes when students don't understand something in a song and they really want to know, teacher, what's might? What's might? Then I might just translate it as I'm singing. Fazer nosso melhor, com todo o nosso esforço, and then again back into English. You know that children do use their first language to understand a second language. There's a huge transference of skills from L1 to L2, and that has to be allowed in the classroom as well, in my opinion. So there's a little song for you. Now let's have a look at what this means, learning to learn. Now, I talked about the environment, and I'm going to just touch on it a little bit again, because I think that helping students to learn is about the way we organize the groups and the children we work with inside our classrooms. Okay, so this would be a campfire setup, and this can be anywhere, but this is the kind of format of a campfire setup where they're going to learn from an expert. So it's a very nice thing about unity when you work in a circle, especially when you want to start something new in the class and when you want everybody to engage and listen to what you're saying. Yes. You don't have to have an outside area necessarily. You don't have to have a campfire. I've also used a campfire using pieces of wood and some red and yellow cloth inside the classroom. But that's setting up an area where they learn from an expert. And then we have what's called the watering hole, where they work in groups and learn from each other, from their peers. And this is a great thing to do because we always have students who are different in our classrooms, right? So fast finishers that can learn with slower and vice versa. When we put them together in carefully thought out pairs or groups, and we encourage the sharing, then one student can often learn from another. They help each other. And then the cave for introspection and individual study, right? Sometimes children need the quiet place to just think a little bit of time out, especially if the classroom's noisy. At the moment, I have a little 9-year-old boy who has some auditory challenges. And if it gets too noisy, he puts his hands over his ears, and he really benefits from a little corner that I have in the classroom with some cushions on the floor, and he can go there and he can take his book and spend 5-10 minutes there just to, you know, be in his own space. It can be very helpful. And then, as I've said, getting the students outside of the classroom too, where they learn by doing through all their senses. Yes, through all their senses. That's why nature's brilliant, because it teaches them in such a natural way. Yes. And we also have to think, as I've said, about our connection. Children need to know like this: see me, hear me, know me. And this is ever more important now our students are coming back, having spent a long time at home, in diverse home situations, having to learn through a screen. Yeah. So they really need this sense of security, a sense of belonging, and a sense of, oh, my teacher gets me. Yeah. Carl Rogers coined this beautiful phrase here. For the evolving child, there is a constant need to know that they are loved as they are, not for what they can do or achieve. And this is called unconditional positive regard. And we can practice this every time our students come into our classroom, right? Some take longer to make that connection, to have eye contact with us, yes. But do consider this as a very important element in the language learning journey. And this gets me on to learning objectives. You're probably aware of Bloom's taxonomy about thinking, learning, and understanding, and this pyramid of strategies, yes, of learning skills. But having come back, as I've said, you might be also aware of Maslow's hierarchy of basic human needs. Because if a child is hungry or upset or cold or something's going on at home, it's going to make learning much more difficult, right? Obviously, we want our students to be able to practice different skills, but the very basic ones like psychological needs and safety, loving and belonging, need to happen at basic levels before self-esteem and self-actualization can happen. Okay, so we're not just teaching the child's brain, we're teaching the whole body. And when we know more about that, then we'll recognize the signs and we'll be able to adapt our lesson planning accordingly, especially to those children who really, really need us, right? Okay. And then learning to learn. Yes, there's a wonderful book by Jean Brewster and Gail Ellis. I think they're the kind of pioneers of this strategy of helping children look at their learning to see exactly the how and the why. So a term which encompasses a wide variety of activities designed to develop metacognitive awareness and learning strategies, right? It is primarily concerned with the process of learning and the aims to focus on the pupil's attention of how they learn in addition to what they learn, right? So as busy teachers, it's really helpful when we can find materials that we see supports that, right? And there are lots of things we can do to help our students learn to learn. Let's have a look at this in terms of practice and support. So you might be aware of this term called scaffolding, right? It's a support system that engages students in the process and helps them, you know, it's like building temporary bridges, right? Introducing clear and helpful steps of new concepts and things we want the students to learn. So what does that look like? You know, scaffolding, okay, it's about supporting the learner piece by piece, but how do we actually see that and what can we do to put it forward? Let's imagine that you have, and this happened actually in my school quite recently, one of my teachers wanted to make a kite, but the actual manual skills of the students in order to make this kite were not, the kids weren't ready for it, okay? And so it kind of fell into this bottom circle, right? Things that you can't do yet, no matter how much support you get, yeah? So it's important for us to gauge when we're thinking about activities, will they really be able to do that autonomously? And if I help them, will they get it or not? So here in the middle, we've got things you can do with a little bit of help. And that's the kind of realm we need to start from, right? Culminating in things you can do all on your own, because we want our students to be clear and clever speakers of English, right? That's the point of learning the language, yeah? So how do we do that in terms of the steps? The teacher is the model, is the mentor, right? So it's really important how clear you are when you want to show your students a new concept, you know, a new piece of grammar, a language chunk, a new lexical set. So I'll do something and you'll watch. That'll be the first step, right? Let me show you as a teacher, I'll do it and you as the class watch. Then I'll do one of the activity and you can help me. So you get the input from the students. So you get them quickly interested in the next step. And then you do one and I'll help you. So you get them to try out an activity and you're going to be there to help. You walk around the classroom, checking, giving the little tips, perhaps modeling the language in some way, perhaps using your body to make a word clear to them. Yes, still helping them a little bit until finally they can do one on their own and you watch. Now, I realized this after being online with the students. Some of the best classes that I managed to do online were ones where my students were really the protagonists. At the time, I was working with young teenagers and we set up mini tutorials where they were going to show skills that they had to make a video of it and show it to the rest of the class. And I used this system, yeah. I showed them something I'd done. They showed me a plan that they had. I gave them some feedback. They did a mini simulation. I gave them some more help. And then they were able to do a presentation on their own. And this is a system that we can use with anything we're going to teach, right? So let me ask you, and you can pop your answers in the chat box again. What do you do to scaffold learning? What does it look like? Here's an idea about wall displays, flashcards, images, etc. We use those, don't we, to help children to understand words and connect them to an image. But what other ways do you see that you scaffold your learning? You might do it intuitively. Okay, games, you show them a video, use gestures a lot, right? Games and puppets, wonderful, yes. Chunking languages, language chunks, okay. Yes, highlighting things, images and flashcards, puppets, crosswords, word puzzles, riddles, wonderful. Mimicry, excellent, yes. Using your body to represent images, very much in the child's realm, good. Instructions where they can ask questions, great. Exactly, all right, wonderful. Oh, great. Facial expressions, body language, absolutely essential. Let me show you the rest of my list. Picture dictionaries, I find, can be wonderful as well to support, as you've said, the image and the word together. We're going to look at some in a bit. The book corner in the classroom, because it's really nice that if a child, like you ask them, what do you want to find out more about that? Oh, I want to know how bees sleep at night. Okay, so then you send them off into the little corner and to look at an encyclopedia or get an iPad to search something, right? So that gives them the sense of being in charge of their research and being in charge of their learning too, right? These are all great things. Teacher talk is really important too. The language that you use to present things in the classroom, your clear sentences, the way that you repeat certain structures so they get used to it in class. And another essential thing of teacher talk is giving students enough time to respond, yeah, because some need to think longer than others and some take a while to respond, yes. So giving them time, yes, that also helps to scaffold their learning. Yes, they can't sometimes think about answers as quick as we think they can. This also that you've mentioned, demonstrating words by miming hot, cold, with sounds and images, miming, and regularly promoting pair and group work. That's also important, isn't it? As we've said, I see it happen a lot. Some children love teaching other kids in the class what they know. They might do it in the first language to help them verify something. I often see that when I have new students coming into my class and I'm speaking a lot of English and they speak in Portuguese to their partner and say, did she say this, this and this? Oh, okay. You know, so they do help each other and you need to give time for them to, you know, time and space for them to be able to do that. And also monitoring feedback, yes, and encourage a culture of learning by mistakes. This is so, so important. I seem to have a lot of students who are a little bit worried about making mistakes. They want to be amazing at English, you know, straight away, without thinking about, you know, we learn so much from mistakes. So I create this culture in the classroom by sometimes making a little mistake. Oops, oh, that's not right. What should I have said? Or what's the word for, I know it in Portuguese, but now I've forgotten what it is in English. Can you help me? Yeah. So showing students that there are lots of resources that they can tap into to be able to communicate as well. Right. Now, what about visual thinking routines? Have you ever seen any of these? Do you use these as well? This was a concept that came from Project Zero from Harvard University, where educators kind of set up a way that we can activate prior knowledge in our students by asking them open-ended questions about things. So this is a particular one that's great for primary school students. This routine is called See, Think and Wonder. And I'm going to share an image from a course book of which I am one of the authors. It is the literary strand of a course book called Global Stage. Perhaps some of you know it. But I really love the visual thinking routines and how they're set out. And you'll see that they really are scaffolded nicely. So here you'll see an image, and you're going to see the sentence stems that help students speak about this image. So the first question is, what do you see? Yes, and answers might be something like the color yellow. I see a street. But I give them time to see as many details as possible. So I'm asking you, what can you see other than the color yellow and more than the street? Tell me in the chat box some of the little details that you can see, and really take time to do like a slow looking and find the details that aren't perhaps obvious. A door, it could be a dad and a son, okay. A trash can, yes. A window, obviously the bananas. A fence, pink boots, there you go, right. Walking bananas, a fence, the sky, big and small, excellent. So you're going to, can you see how this divergent thinking goes deeper? Green window, a trash can, yes. Maybe something historical. People are hidden. I can see bricks, a red door with the number 4, a doorbell. Yeah. Can you see also this thing? This is like a typical thing in some countries where you have to chain your dustbin to the railings in case somebody steals your rubbish bin. Yeah. So there's lots of little details there. Yeah. Now, next question. What do you think about that? What does it make you think? I think it's a party. I think it's mum and a daughter. What do you think? Tell me something you think about this image. You think they might be costumes, possibly. They could be costumes. What else does it make you think? Oh, it could be winter, because maybe the coat and the boots, okay. It could be a British street, okay. It could be banana umbrellas, or a game of hide and seek. Could be a rainy day, possibly. Possibly they want to eat the bananas. Yeah. Okay. It's not Brazil, because you can already see some cultural things going, possibly. Yeah, because of the buildings. Okay. Now let's take the thinking one bit further. What do you wonder? Are they happy? I wonder how old the girl is. I wonder if they're clowns, possibly. I wonder where they're going. Yes, exactly. I wonder where they're going. I wonder if they're happy. I wonder if they bought those bananas. Oh, I wonder if it's carnival time. Maybe it is. I wonder why they're carrying such huge bananas, right? I wonder if the costumes are heavy. Exactly. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for those contributions. Exactly. So you can see with a carefully chosen, interesting image that it ignites curiosity, then asking questions and making observations, you know, it can be very productive, especially if you see that you have the little language chunks already visual to help your students, right? To help them speak. Excellent. Now, other things that we can use to promote interaction and children being the protagonists and sharing of ideas are using post-its. Perhaps you use post-it notes. I use them a lot in class. We can use them for classroom management. We can use them for reflection. What did you think? Did you think it was interesting, boring, amazing? Yeah. For reading strategies, what was the beginning, middle, end of the story? Yes. Who are the characters? What's going to happen next? Or perhaps for praise as well. Yeah? Did any of you use Jamboard, the Jamboard app, when you were working online? That's a great app for using and projecting post-it notes. Yeah, I personally like to take a little post-it note, and I like to write a little message here for each student when I have the time, and then I stick it under their tables, under their desks, and it can be a little special little treat at the end of class. It can be a symbol, little drawing, doesn't have to be words as well, but post-it notes are wonderful for production, for project work, for scaffolding learning and making learning visual, which is really important, right? So I would encourage you, if you don't have post-its, try and get some, or even make them, right? Any little bit of paper will do. Okay, let's move on. So I mentioned before picture dictionaries, right? They are wonderful because they're so visual. They bring language and vocabulary, adjectives, nouns with images. And you'll see this example. I love reading, right? You know, it's lovely when you can have material that really helps you. And this is a great way to like set the tone for students to learn language right away, you know, and as they go through the unit, they can flip back to the picture dictionary to help them remember that word. I love it. And I love the way the illustrations are so pleasing as well for children. It's important for them to have nice images too. And so picture dictionaries are great for scaffolding the learning, helping students get from one activity to another, and also something to refer to. Also in these course books, you can see graphic organizers are used a lot, like writing in charts, like using Venn diagrams. This also helps to make the language learning really visual and practical. Here's another one. This is used for a language review. Yeah. So here the words have different colors. That also helps students organize their ideas. And also a little personalized note as they're talking about food and things they like and don't like, describing food. They can also personalize the activity here in this little box and make their comment. Here on the other page, you'll see that they have a carefully structured way of adding words to sentences. And here, a way for them to add, look, write and match. They're going to add letters in the middle of these words. I really love when words are supported, new words are supported, but at the same time, children are allowed, you know, they're given the chance to add to that word by adding a letter or something. I think it gives them a lot of, it makes them feel empowered that they're learning and that they know and that they're getting ahead, you know, and they can do it on their own. I think that's a really good feeling too. Metacognitive skills, not just cognitive, but metacognitive, like, for example, working out grammar rules. I'm going to show you an example, helping them to understand patterns in language, building presentation skills, because these are the skills of the children, you know, of the century, right? Knowing how to present their skills in another language, present their ideas and share design concepts, thinking about the meaning behind a story. This is also metacognitive too. So there are lots of different ways that they're learning in different ways, learning in different ways. So let's have a look just briefly at this grammar exercise. So students will have had carefully graded input to this grammar point, and they will have seen the language in context. They will have seen and heard it in context. And then they get a chance to fill in this graphic organizer here, fill in the chart. You'll see that they have everything they need on the page, you know. We're setting them up for success in that way. We want them to feel, oh, I don't get it, I don't understand. We want them to have the tools to succeed. And so when course books do this very gently and carefully, it really helps them to get this sense of ownership about their learning. And we also have to make sure students read rubrics, don't we? You know, learn how to carefully look at instructions on the page, look at the little details to find the path for getting the answers correct as well, right? Here's another one that is going to support a presentation. So first through a video, structuring the language of careful listening task, onto a graphic organizer that personalizes the language that they've just heard and looked at carefully. Then they're going to have their script and they're going to share their script with a peer, and then eventually they're going to present it. And don't forget as well, a little moment of reflection here. How did I do? Did I speak clearly? Thinking about self-reflection. Carefully scaffolded, you can see it, right? It really is helpful for us when we can have that. And then lastly, self-reflection tasks at the end of units, right? In this particular one here with the tree, it can be for younger learners. So if they don't know how to write, they can do drawings. What did I do? What did I learn? What was my favorite part? And here, I love this one for 5th graders. I love this one in the middle, number 2. What was your aha moment, right? So carefully graded self-evaluation, not the same all the way through the course books, but graded so that it sounds kind of cool for older kids as well. What was that aha, I got it moment? I really like that. It's really helps teachers. Okay. And then finally, before we get to the questions, just going to share some very quick projects that I did in my school and hope that maybe they spark something that you want to do in your class too. So we have the kitchen garden here in our school, and we were going to look at the things we have in the garden, right? So the first question, why is there a garden in the school? What's it for? To plant things to eat, said Giuliano. So that we can learn to work on the land, Lizzie said. Because people don't want to eat animals, Elena said. Because it's just a plant-based garden, right? So what kind of things do we plant? We plant herbs to make tea, lettuce and tomatoes for our sandwiches at break time. And then we could plant corn, watch it grow and eat it. So they give all this input. And as they're giving this input, I'm watching them carefully to think what is the part that they find most interesting. And in this particular project, they found the sense of smell very curious. So then I knew where to go with structuring my lesson. And it ended up a little bit like this. Visual input through images, looking at different smells and what smells can tell us. Sometimes smells can tell us about danger. They can tell us the smell of a brand new book. And these were all things that the students suggested. Smelly socks, the dustbin, smell of burning, electric burning, smell of freshly baked bread. So we talked about smells in general and we used that vocabulary. And then we came to a little gathering to talk about what we were going to do. So we were going to look at plants, smell the plants, identify them in the garden, give them names and talk about preferences, whether we like them or not. So they have these little bowls that they had smell. You can see a student here smelling, so very sensorial, but using language all the time. Identifying, I found it, here it is. Is this plant this one? Is this the rosemary plant? Is this the tree? Is this the plant with the tea, with the lemon tea? They made tea as well. So it was a very active project, and it finished with this poster. Where does smell go once it's in our nose? That was the key question. It goes to our lungs? No, it goes to our brain so that we know what the smell is. And they got so excited about it, they did a collective artwork with a brain here. So you can see the brain, they're smelling a flower. You can see that this is one of those little perfume bottles, you know, that does like that. And always I let my students personalize something in some way. And there's a student here who tattooed the initials of the school on the poster on the neck of the man, the secret garden. So, you know, students as protagonists, right? Follow their lead, step back sometimes to see where they want to go with something. And the last one is the design thinking. It was a unit about buildings and architecture. So having always an image that connects to children and starts their curiosity going. What can the children see? What are they looking down on? Different buildings of different styles and designs. Features of buildings like a gargoyle, making a gargoyle out of coloured clay as well, using the hands. And we designed a cityscape. Whoops, I've gone one head forward. Let's see. We designed a cityscape in a shoebox, you see. They learnt about perspective, about the foreground, the middle ground and the background that was going to go in the shoebox. We talked about buildings from all over the world. We looked at photographs, we looked at videos. We even had students who wanted to make a space-scape as well, and students who wanted to do a countryside scape, and that's also fine. But it was a beautiful project, and it finished with these two ones here. This one that was kind of oriental with the river, yeah, going in the middle, and this one that was a nightscape as well. And for students to present their cityscapes, also again, scaffolding the language into little doable chunks. So in my cityscape, you can see holding them, they were holding the physical shoebox and pointing out things to their peers in the background, in the middle ground, in the foreground. The style I chose because, and also afterwards, reflecting on the learning. Really simple, simple materials, very accessible to students, but also memorable learning taking place. So to finish, every child deserves an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they can possibly be. And that is the final message. I hope the webinar has been useful and inspiring to you. I hope you've got some ideas, or perhaps you've seen something that you think, oh, great, I'm doing that. So that's fantastic. Here you'll see my email address and Instagram if you want to follow any of the work that we do. Thank you for being here so very much. It's such a privilege. And also again to Macmillan for this wonderful invitation. I'm going to stop sharing now, so we have a little time for some questions. Okay, and here's Nathan.
I am back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can, good. Lucy, thank you so much. I absolutely loved the webinar. I love all of the creativity, the artwork, getting the kids outside. You've touched on so many important elements, like so many. You've got everything in there from social and emotional learning. You've got just a ton of stuff. Learning to learn was in there. Learning from your peers. I love all that stuff about children learning from each other. Utilizing them as a resource, I guess, is key. But yeah, this kind of learning by doing, you know, and looking at the photos, you know, I'm just sitting here watching the webinar and looking at the students, the children in those photos, you know, they look like they're having such a great time, you know, doing all of these activities and everything's so colorful. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And I don't think I'm alone. I'm looking at the chat box kind of whizzing by, and
that's nice.
I think people really get a lot, and they love seeing you know, teaching and learning in other contexts, you know, and seeing it happen in the world. So, thank you very much.
Jen. Yeah, great. I can see some people I know as well. It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Good. Yeah.
One thing to note as well, Nathan, is that you know, we do have challenging days in our classrooms as well, right? It doesn't always go very smoothly, but if we have a creative outlet, if we have something up our sleeve, you know, sometimes we can get back a class that's going off track, and we can get it back by using one of these little things, you know, by using one of these little tasks.
Yeah, and actually I'll point to something that I really liked in the webinar, is that you mentioned this variety of learning spaces. So not just having one thing going on in the classroom at any one time. You know, so if a student's not enjoying a particular activity, they can move to somewhere else. They may feel like, I'm not in a reading mood, I kind of want to paint at the moment, you know, and they can express the language through the painting instead, or, you know, doing role play or something. That there's so many options. I guess a question, and I think a question similar to this was asked. If you don't have much space or resources or equipment, you know, can you set up those, you know, kind of group work, different types of activities at the same time? Is it easy? Do you have any advice for teachers on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not always easy because it's a lot of work and planning. So you have to know, that's why you have to know your class very well. You're going to have to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. Some things like that involve more mess and more artistic things, you have to do those a little bit further on in the semester, when you know your students, when you know what they're capable of, when you know who works well with who, and what materials are going to be effective. That means that in everything you do, you have to be intentional, right? So you've got to think, carefully. And sometimes, you know, it is trial and error. Sometimes we try something like the kite project that, you know, was too difficult for the students. That's okay as well, you know. Again, the culture of it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there was another question. I'm moving into the questions. I was going to give you a little break, but this question also kind of relates to it. What if, you know, a teacher works in a school and the school culture is very kind of textbook driven, you know, following it kind of page by page, you know, how would you advise them to get more creative or bring kind of critical thinking into their classroom?
Well, I think, you know, I think there are things that you can do. For example, you don't have to have paint and cardboard boxes to be creative. I think rhymes are very, very creative as well. Songs are super artistic for a lot of students, and they are still things that we do sitting down at desks. Yeah, it is really difficult when your school has a sort of educational path that doesn't allow for a lot of that. But, you know, I'm one of those teachers who, that's why I have my own school, because I couldn't find a place where I could do what I really believed. And, you know, it's so important that you're learning, your teaching and educational philosophies as a teacher align with the place that you work in. You know, speak to your coordinator, get to go with other teachers to try something new, and then show you know, the board of directors of your school that actually is working and it's very beneficial for children, you know. So you can make some little mini revolutions in some places.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so start small and like you say, show the benefits.
Exactly.
I think that really highlights.
Yeah.
I think it really highlights the need for teachers to collaborate, work together. And that's part of that journey, right? You know, you think about a child going from class to class with different teachers. Those teachers need to communicate and work together to figure out how to best navigate that student towards, you know, their full potential, I guess.
I was just about to say that, you know, collaboration and reflection is everything in a teaching team. You know, we can't do it on our own. We need to bounce ideas off other people, and, you know, and that's why it's important to have this sharing spirit as a teacher. You know, share your good ideas. Don't feel that somebody's going to steal your idea. You're going to share it, and they're going to do it in their way, different from your way. But everybody's going to benefit from something that's working, right? So remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes and I've got a couple of extra questions, but before we do that, Daria, if you want to share the screen, because I know in the chat box, a lot of people have been asking the question about the examples that you've been using throughout this webinar. And all of these examples came from Macmillan Education's wonderful course book, Global Stage. It's a primary course book, 6-level language and literacy book. So it's got this unique dual approach is what we've called it. So you have one book for language development and you have one book for literacy development, which I think is really nice. So we know that kind of language skills, they're so important, you know, for a child's success, you know, both throughout school, going to university, in the world of work, but also, you know, in the world outside of, you know, the everyday life as well, I think. So, you know, developing their confidence, developing their competence in this language, you know, there's two strands to that. There's this communicative aspect, you know, and we know that they're going to be interacting with English language speakers from a variety of contexts, you know, in this kind of globalized world that we now live in. So we have this one kind of communicative aspect that we want them to develop in. And then on the other hand, we have this kind of strong literacy aspect that we also want them to develop in. And I think Global Stage is one of my favorite course books because it has this really strong literacy components, you know, these really beautiful stories, you know, that give the language meaning, that give it context, you know, and there's a lot of kind of cultural stuff going on there. All that global citizenship is embedded into those stories. So we'll put the link into the chat box so that people can go and have a look at Global Stage. I would definitely recommend going and having a look at it. You know, it embeds everything and it's all integrated. Everything's there, social and emotional skills, global citizenship, that learning to learn aspect that you've been giving us, those lovely examples from, you know, and developing this love of reading for students. That can be quite easily overlooked, I think, in an English language classroom. You know, we're very kind of functional. You know, I wanted them to get them to learn this knowledge so that they're A2, and then I want them to learn this so that they're B1. But actually developing that love of reading, I think really helps to drive them to become independent learners. You know, and we know the benefits of learning to read academically, but outside of that as well. You know, more female leaders. I had a really great quote a while ago, actually. I think it was something along the lines of, if a girl learns to read, if she has a child, her child is 50% more likely to survive past the age of 5, which I think is, you know, it's that power of reading, you know, so really focus on that in the classroom. You know, and when we were watching your webinar, it was really came through. You know, you had your reading corner, you know, with perhaps a soft space to sit, a quiet area, you know, and getting them to investigate. I love that word, investigating, you know, going in there and having a look at the language.
Oh, I love storytelling.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I used to love it as well. So that's all about global stage. I thought I would kind of highlight that because I know a lot of people were asking lots of questions about, you know, where are these examples coming from? So go to the website and have a look at that.